1, 2, 1, 2, check. Habe ich hier Ton drauf? Okay, das Mikro ist für für den Livestream. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, students, alumni, I'm very happy to see you again today on third 3 of the Hamburg Portfolio Review. I would like to introduce you to our program today. At first, we will start with the panel, and I would like to introduce our moderator, Miriam Zlobinski. Please join me here. Mia is a visual historian and also the co-publisher of the online magazine, which I would like you to have a look to watch it on online, the online magazine Re-Vue.org, re-vue.org. And we will first start with the panel, then we have a break from 1 hour, and my dear colleague Nina Röder is here with us, and she will, if the rain stops today, you can't never be sure, then we will have a guided tour through our exhibition outside in front of the campus and the museum. And afterwards, we will listen to the CANON Keynote. And now, Mia, please introduce our guest. Thank you.
Thank you, Heike, for welcome us here today. I can welcome Kateryna Radchenko and Julia Kochetova. Please take your seat with me. And thank you. The HPR invited so many people from all around the world to share and discuss their photographic work and experiences. And in this vivid atmosphere, I welcome you here at first as well, offline in Hamburg and online, wherever you are at the moment. Bringing something to light is a metaphor that emphasizes the deep connection between journalistic information and the medium of photography. It has a deep connection between these two aspects, and it is a hint to the aspects of creating attention or even attraction. So, for the HPR team, it was clear from the very beginning that they want also to give space during this weekend to the role of photography and photographers in the Russian war in Ukraine. And that is our panel today. So let me introduce you at first, Kateryna Radchenko, who is with us today. She is a curator and since 2015, founder and director of the festival Odesa Photo Days. She studied photography, had several international fellowships, and works internationally also as a lecturer and curator. Welcome, Kateryna. And I'm happy to welcome you, Julia. Julia is a photojournalist and a documentary filmmaker. She studied at Moholy School of Journalism and the International Documentary Film Festival in Amsterdam. As a freelancer, she covered the Maidan Revolution, the annexation of Crimea, and the ongoing Russian war in Ukraine. She is also a contributor for different international publications, and we also see her work already here in Germany, for example, in Die Zeit. We will start this panel with a short video from Julia's work. And at this moment, I will also give you a short note that there are explicit content, so please be aware of that if we now see the video from Julia. So a short.
One day, everyone will leave. The story will stop being that interesting for foreigners. This war will be too long and too bloody. It's impossible to edit and publish. Too much focus. There will be a bigger and louder explosion somewhere else, and everyone will book a war ticket to a new destination. You will stop writing, putting emojis in comments, and praying for me. That's okay, I know it will happen one day. One day, alarm sirens will shut up. One day, we will have so many houses that no one returns to, because the owners of these keys have been killed in their yards. One day, we will find the last unburied body. One day, we will sit in the kitchen and keep silent for hours. We will have a map of the country where someone ours died in each region. One day, we will sit in the kitchen, and I hope I have someone to talk to, and you will come back alive. I know this day will come. I hope we will chat, and my voice doesn't tremble as now. I hope and I love you too.
Julia, the war is something, a situation where a personal and a professional life is affected. Everything's changing. Everything is under new rules. You write about it. You photograph. How was for you, how were the days in February when the large-scale invasion began? How do you experience this time when everything started or get to a new niveau of the aggression?
except of the fact that I'm photographing and writing about, I'm living this life. And that's something what Ukrainian photographers and journalists and filmmakers are going through, that actually something what's just news for the rest of the world, that's like the real life for all of us. And that's not about headlines or great stories or important stories to tell. That's about people's life. I was on assignment since 20th of February. All Kyiv was in panic, withdrawing cash and actually buying the extra gas and buying jerry cans. So I met my fixer and producer in Donetsk region and said, like, Dima, we should buy an extra jerry can. And he was laughing so badly. He's saying, like, I'm here for months. All these foreign journalists are coming and waiting for a big boom. Nothing gonna happen, believe me. And I was like, okay, dear, you are right, but let's buy an extra jerry can. I woke up on 24th, actually, because my fixer opened my hotel room saying, like, hey, Julia, woke up, everything has started. I was like, everything has started 8 years ago. So I looked at the camera next to my bed, and immediately I know that what I'm gonna do next. I didn't have any doubts or thoughts, what should I do? Like, what's my role? Should I join the army? Should I like leave the country? No, it wasn't a question at all. I was just like immediately, and I actually so happy that I was in this working mode at the moment when the full-scale invasion has started and Russia invaded Ukraine again. I was in this working mode already. So there were no time for reflecting or thinking that, oh, should I, what if? I just read the message from my parents saying that we're in the basement. I was like, okay, that's a new reality to accept. And also checking that there are like 40 calls, 40 missed calls from my friends all over the country who were trying to rather escape and flee to Western Ukraine or to flee to Europe.
So we have already here like these, the aspects of the friends, family, checking each other, how is it, is everybody okay? And on the other hand, you mentioned already a lot of international journalists were waiting for the boom. So there was on this, let us call it professional journalistic and even photojournalistic side, some like waiting or like expecting that now it will start. And so how was it for you? Was it helpful to have the international journalist there? Was it something where you immediately was already connected, or like was it something that was like for you a fact, but beside that you were like working on your own, on your assignments, or like get your first calls? How was it?
I was assigned like since 20th of February, but even despite the fact that really prominent war photographers were coming, and you're just like, oh my God, that's a bad sign. If these people are here, that's a bad sign, meaning the bad sign for my country, while the kind of stories they tell means and leads to the fact what's gonna happen. Despite this fact, I was thankful and glad that this war is that much covered, because I do really believe in visual storytelling, and I do really believe that our work is not about documenting war crimes, not only about that, but there are so many crimes happening right now in Ukraine which should be documented. So it would be impossible to make it through only Ukrainian journalists, only through locals. That's why Mostly, I had my so-called international bubble, and I've been working with Spiegel and Vice News and Tide for the very first 3 months, let's say. And there were no time to reflect or something like this. 5 previous years, I did documentaries, and I had my fancy life of a film director with a crew from 5 till 30 people doing all this work for me, and I'm creating my worlds. But I'd really understood that photography is the fastest medium to reflect on what's going on. But as well, I don't really the biggest fan of news photography. I respect all my colleagues from news agencies. They're doing really, really hard-working job, but I don't really believe that you could remember news on the next day. That's why actually I start to write from this super intimate and personal side of you. Someone called it war diary, someone saying that it's like, oh my God, it's too intimate to share, but I do not believe that you would remember something which is not that intimate tomorrow.
So Julia was already, she mentioned that in a working mode, she started with her diary to have her own voice and like another level of involving people. With your Instagram account, everybody can read your texts and follow you there. Kateryna, how was this situation for you when, like in February, everything changed again?
Well, I could say if start from the beginning, in 2014, when the war starts in Ukraine, it was for me quite clear that it was like a really huge wave of manipulation in the media. And of course, like the easiest way of this manipulation, it was photography and visual materials. So, and then I decided that like kind of to create the platform which can provide the education for the photographers, for the general audience, how to read and how to work with the visual materials and with photography in general. So, and in 2015, I created a festival, Odesa Photo Days festival, which actually right now is only one photo festival in Ukraine. But the idea was that like we really like focus that like this is a platform for to provide education. Like this is a platform to support Ukrainian photographers, the platform to bring knowledge to Ukraine, to really like to work with audience, with kids, with the professional photographers, like and like to do as much as possible. So that it was my first reaction on the war. And so actually, like this year, we planned the 8th edition of our festival, and our team met in January in Odessa, and we discussed, okay, what shall we do if the full escalation happen? How should we change the format? We discussed like different approaches, and I could say now it was super utopian talk. Everything what we discuss is like not comes to the reality. It's not possible because like first of all, we never had this experience to live during the war. We never had like a real understanding how it is, and everything what you know is like usually okay, like you know from the news, you know from the books, you know from the photos from the Second World War or from the Syria or other places, which is still far and it's not your experience. And when it comes, like you understand that like it's completely and it's not possible to predict it and to know and to plan. It's just absolutely different way. So and then like from 24th of February actually. It was also clear that like the festival will cancel for this year and it will not possible like to provide it. And we decided, okay, as we have these connections and platform, what we can do is like first things is to spread the news about Ukraine and what's going on inside. Like it was important like that to share the photography from Ukraine. From another side, we decided like to support Ukrainian photographers and to support like in the way that okay, like a lot of photographers became the war photographer, never had the experience before. And they became the war photographer not because of their wish, just because they're living in the situation and they just capture the situation, how their city is destroyed and how their country destroyed. So this was like radical switch for a lot of artists. And also like, of course, like it was clear that like a lot of artists didn't have like any contacts or segments or like any possibilities like to share these materials. But also they did a lot of stories because it was kind of also the way of reflection, and also this is the moment you can't do nothing. You can't just sit and observe what's going on. Like it's like you have to choose your way, like to be able to do something. And then there was like the moment that we just like make the call. We like say to our photography community, okay, everybody who would like to share the materials, please do it. And we will collect all the photos, and then we'll share these photos. We'll make the distribution of these materials. So we became a volunteering agency, let's say, like this. But our main idea was really like to collect the materials from the artists, like to help them to show these photos, like to support them by getting some fees and like some financial support. But in the same time to spread this information like in the media first, and then to the public talks, to the different presentations, to the exhibitions as well. So we just like decide, like choose like all the methods which were possible to spread the information through the photography.
A lot of work, needed work. Julia already pointed out or like put an eye on the media coverage, even in your quote. How would you describe, on your point of view, the media coverage so far? You said you wanted to distribute, to share. Does it happen in the way you wished? Is it something where you say, yeah, there is?
Well, I could say that like I didn't have the wish, like it was just fast reaction, but like obviously the first 4 months, of course, like Ukraine was on the first pages of the different newspapers in Europe and in the globe. But also like now it's like the war still going on, and now we have less and less information from Ukraine. And then we can see that, like for example, for the general people, like sometimes it looks that like everything is fine and nice. And I'm really like worried that like it could be continuation of the situation which happened in 2016, let's say, because like it was the same. The war starts in 2014 in Ukraine. But because of lack of coverage, because of lack of information from Ukraine, like it was just like we're able like to make this kind of utopian understanding that the war is finished and everything is nice and clear in Ukraine, and like we are continuing like the normal life. And that's why it was possible to make this full escalation and continuation of the war. So this is like also the things that like now it's less and less materials in mass media, of course. But also like from our side, we are working not only with media, like actually we started to work with media only because of war, like we are a festival. Like our work is work for the exhibitions. So, and then we actually like nowadays we are focusing on the, I could say, long-term projects, and this is exhibitions which we are trying to create and to build for the different museums, different spaces, different countries, and to create by this the place for the dialogue and the place of the understanding. Because it's also like what we're trying to do, not just show the photography as a news photography, that like, okay, it happens, but like more to create the space of analyzing that like, okay, it happened, but why it happened, how could it develop, what it brings, and actually how it's like what the awareness could it brings for the other countries. So kind of to bring them more platform for the dialogue and for the conversation. And in this case, I see that this is like more like we are like choose this way of the exhibition work.
So it's like a function that's like on two ways, as you describe it, as like a volunteering agency, and as well still with the identity of the Odesa Photo Festival. And Kateryna as well brought some visual material, photos, to this panel. So we will see as here as well graphic content, be aware, but we will start with the video now. Okay, thank you. we will turn the sound a bit off to talk already about the pictures we see here. It's the official video of the Odesa Photo Days 2022, as you created. And for me, like it's not only an impressive photo material and documentation, it's only like from the, let's keep it concrete, to a practical side, how you are in exchange with all the photographers and with the creatives you support and you show here.
Well, actually, like the things like when the war started, like when the from the February, we just like we published like for the photographers like, who would like to collaborate with us and who would like to work with us. And then the things that like I received from the 20 artists, the open folders, Google Drive folders. And each day I received the new materials, because like most of them, they didn't had the chance to work for the selection, pre-selection, like to work like with these materials. And like about like 3 months, I just work with Google Drives, like about like from 20, then 30 artists, like each day new materials, and like I had to do the new selection and like to work on this, to spread these materials. To be honest, I never work as an agency. I never work as in news. I'm curator and mostly working with contemporary art. But the things that like this, like 3 months, I saw much more than I wanted to see, and there was like much more materials, which will be actually never will be published, because like it's too tough materials. Like, and also like I can understand that like the things, like everything what I saw, it was quite complicated, but in the same time for the artists, like and for the photographers, it was much more worse. And the things that like we started to work with the photographers from completely different cities, so we can cover it and collect materials from Kyiv region, from Kharkiv, from Mariupol, from west part of Ukraine, and by this we were able to create really the story what's going on in Ukraine. And this video, it was like super fast reaction, like because like it was like only 52 days during the war, and we decided like to collect select some materials to show actually what's going on like in Ukraine during this like 52 days, and like to spread this video for the different institutions, for different festivals, to show it in the publicly. And this is also like kind of was the way, and still is the way, like to share the information, to show this information. But yeah, but this is like the possibility that like we collected all these materials from the different artists. This is a possibility to see the different angles and like different cities during this time, and what the event happened.
How important is for you both to be your own channel for the pictures?
For me, that the story, that war is personal. And that's something what I was told by lots of my foreign colleagues who covered Afghanistan, saying that, Julia, there were no Afghan photographers who were keep following and keep sharing what's going on. That's why the whole world, if you don't see, it doesn't exist. If you don't share, if it's not published, like the war could be committed again. Silence always kills. The lack of material provokes that it could be, this gap could be filled with a fake news. And Russia is well known in creating the machine industry on creating this fake news, which could be filled in any gap which is not presented by local photographers, by local journalists and local filmmakers. It's not only about knowing the language or context, but that's our decision to stay and to use our voice. I do believe in only in personal stories and like in this first-hand look, because you do really believe. That's how social media actually gave a chance to look through these boundaries which were not possible to achieve. Even now with the counteroffensive in Kharkiv region and the ban for journalists during the 2 weeks, I guess, to cover what's going on because of security regulations, There were a bunch of videos on TikTok made by soldiers. And this footage, like I'm talking as a filmmaker, it's incredible source to make this like user-generated content based on first-hand look. That's how it looks. For sure, I'm not comparing it how photojournalists could cover this perspective, but the access and the possibility to have your personal voice, that's something what makes this work visible. That's something what I made the decision for myself that I'm gonna follow and continue and not stopping that. Because I do really know that it works and it should continue because the work continues as well.
Kateryna, you said some month ago in a talk, I know that these photos are not pictures people are interested in to show. So it's not an easy material for sure. What is so far your experience with the feedback that you are like now have as somebody who's caring internationally for it, that these photos are visible or Ukrainian photographers are being shown?
Well, it's like, yeah, like it's, first of all, of course, like it's some materials which we are showing here, I could say it's soft selection, honestly. And it's a lot of photos which will be like not possible to show publicly because like that will be like kind of painful materials. Mm-hmm. Which I could say like for us it's even much more painful because like when we see these materials it's like our country and our people, so it's even like much more high level of this acceptation. And like what we are trying to do and like this it's like to work and to show this photography, it's important not just like to show okay it's like it's going on, but it's like it's also about to spreading the information. And in this case, I'm absolutely like agree with Julia, and I would like to add that like this is nowadays, of course, like we have a lot of international media in Ukraine, and it's really like covered the material like for war really like pretty well, let's say. But in the same time, the photos on the series which we see from Ukrainian artists and the photos from the international photographers, it could be different because like it's like the question of access and question of language and question of understanding the situation, the question of understanding the context. And I think it's important, like I believe that photography is super strong media to tell the story, to change the life, but it's much more important not just to show the photography, but also like to understand the context which is behind. And by the work of Ukrainian photographers, by the work of our festival, we are trying really to explain about this context and explain like that something which is maybe not visible on the first way, but like it's important to understand. It's important to understand that the war starts 8 years ago. Important to understand like how the Ukraine developed from the 1991 and why we have this. All these things connecting and all these like things were predictable, but like it's important like to understand this and really like to work with these materials like in the context. And this is like I could say that like this is like takes a lot of time and energy, of course, from our side. But from another side, it's important because like this is like the work not for the short term, it's for the long perspective, for our like work of our country as a like fighting for identity and the place in the historical political context. And this is like how I see what we are doing now. We are staying in Ukraine, we are not moving, we are like risk every day, but this is our choice for the future. And this is like also like the artist like who is working and photographers like covering the war. It's the idea that they really wanted to show and they really wanted to make the changes, because like this is not just photography, it's evidence. It's evidence of the terrible war, evidence of the like all this terrorism what's Russia doing.
For the photo festival, maybe we have to add something that explains as well the role you have at the moment, because since you're the founder of Odesa Photo Festival in 2015, you worked the whole time on reflecting and showing Ukrainian photography from a historical perspective for future talents. So you mentioned the identity, the Ukrainian identity, and for me, we have you here. How would you describe like a Ukrainian photographic identity?
Let's say, okay, like it could be a really like long story about the history of Ukrainian photography. I'll try to make it super short, but like important that like the briefly like the in Soviet time it was not possible like to make the free photography. It was censorship and crucial censorship, like no naked body, no like political context, not social images. And in 70s, the first visual revolution happens in Kharkiv. This is important to say because like a lot of books which were published in Russia, it says that it was like Russian photographers, but no, it's like Ukrainian photographers who did in Ukrainian city in Kharkiv, like the first revolution, who started to work with the image to show the reality. And it was dangerous in that time, but they did it. Like the Kharkiv School of Photography together with Mikhailov, they did this like crucial switch in the visual culture of Ukraine. But then also like in 2000s, like Ukrainian artists and photographers, they started to work a lot on the understanding of what is photography, what is art, but like through the photography and through the art to understand the political, social context, but also like the question of the body, the question of identity, the question of your space, what is country for you, and what is like how like work with these bodies. And then like it was also the time of the new research, but research without the censorship and the kind of possibilities. It gave the possibility and the push for the young generation in 2000s. And now like continue this topic, like I could say that like Ukrainian art mostly focus on the social political topics, even if it's art, even if it's contemporary art and contemporary approaches, but still it's focused on the social political context. Because during last 30 years we are living revolution, war, war. So it's kind of, it's like we have so strong political influences that like we have to react on it, and this is what is actually we have in our art platform, that like it's mostly reflection on this political situation, more than reflection on the private topics or like private ideas or like some research in the general topics. So this is shortly.
I appreciate that you run through the history of Ukraine as well as through the heritage and origins, and still like the influence for contemporary photographers even in the war, that there's like this responsibility for covering the war, as Julia also described it.
Same as Kata mentioned, that my country and my people, we are that much about freedom, and the whole past reflects through photography or film, because we are the country in transition, which still trying to overcome this heritage which we had thanks to Soviet Union. That's like, because we did and goes totally another way, the freely one, and for sure this shaky reality affects on artists because we are oversensitive, and that's something where I was thinking a lot these days. While is it my advantage or disadvantage that I'm an artist in a country of war? While it hurts more, but as well it helps you to create something real and something honest, but for sure it leads to mental health issues after. But my point is that all art and coverage through since 1991 is the coverage from the country on the way to freedom, with this freely wish inside, with this like really, really strong desire. But like when you either learning how to swim or when you know how to swim, but there is a storm around you, for sure, like this art is shaky. And that's something what I adore and love, and always see their amazing feedback from international audience, because I saw a lot of European photography, let's say, and that's something what we discussed with Kateryna yesterday, that everything is so made according to the rules, but in Ukrainian art, it's just like there are no rules. Like we are still on the way to find how to reflect this freedom, how to achieve this freedom, and how to show it to the whole world. That's why it's so authentic. That's why it's so prominent. That's why it's so authentic, because you just feel the real touch. And that's something what you truly believe.
Thank you. I can say from your voices, it's clear that here photography as a medium is deeply connected with the social political situation for years now and even now, and has a strong connection to the actual living situation as well in a war as a photographer, becoming sometimes even a war photographer, or being in contact and an exchange with the international scene. We have not enough time to speak more or deeply enough to raise all the points we want, but we want to use or give you the chance to ask your questions at this point from the online community as well as here in the room, so that we can use the chance to ask Kateryna and Julia here now. So if there are any questions, we have a microphone in the room and our team has an eye on the chat. Please let us know. Yeah. Oh God.
Hello, thank you very much for the discussion, and I have a short, briefly question about, so the war is now ongoing, as you mentioned, of course, if everybody knows, and does you have any idea how it could end? So I think it should end when the Russians are going back to their country and stop the war, of course, but afterwards you will have a long border with Russia. You are neighbors in a way, and I think maybe from my point of view, it nearly cost years or decades to be not friends, but to live with each other so close. What do you think about this? How could the future be for your country and for your people?
I think first we will win, then we'll destroy the regime in Russia, and then it will be this much more faster way to find the communication with like Russians, I think, after this. But yeah, it's not it's absolutely not clear how long we will stay in this situation and how we'll end it. But it's clear that we'll fight till the moment when we'll get all our lands back.
But I think it will take decades.
If we'll see the history of Ukraine, it takes centuries.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah, but no matter how much should it take? No matter how long.
No, of course, yeah.
And is it the question that it's a question of our territories back? Our people being buried and identified in a proper way and commemorate in a proper way. What should be the point? As well, I did a story about cyber war, which would be not ever ended, never. While these troops, they are continue to fight and they would not stop. This world is totally super interesting, not that visual, but as well, did it stop when the last empire gonna fall? That's we don't have another option. And when someone saying oh, when it gonna stop? I said when we're gonna win? When the last empire on this planet gonna stop to exist? Because we should not feed the Russian regime with the idea that it could be same it was before. No, like for me, this like the last line happened in 2014. For some of Ukrainians, it happened only on 24th of February, and I'm not blaming them. Like everyone should had this turning point, and now the whole country had it.
Okay. Thank you so much. Some more questions from other people, maybe? Miriam?
I will have a look to the audience. If there are any questions, just take your chance. Not at all. Yeah, Heike Ollatz.
Yeah, I have a question for Julia. I would like to know how your daily life is now. So you were saying you were working as a director, and now you are a war photographer. So what does that mean for you? How can I imagine your days in Ukraine?
I usually ask not to call me and not to title me as a war photographer, because as Katya said, that wasn't my choice. Same like I had an experience to photograph our president, and he also looks not like a president, not like a war president. That's not the choice which my country had made. And let's say first 4 months, you just like filming, you photographing and editing, and not replying emails and not sending portfolio for amazing Odesa Photo Festival to get presented because you just have no time. And now I'm trying to balance between assignments. That's why actually I'm here, making really, really tough decisions. Should I just like continue to run because everyone is running and it's so important, and like the history is happening right now. But nothing changed that much except of the rhythm. I had same during Maidan revolution, when you just sleep in the press center for months and just like file and file and file, and then it get published. But we are saying that it's like Maidan on steroids, like their upper format, their additional variant of ongoing revolution, because it's a full-scale war. The first month was tough, like honestly. I was made to live in a hotel with the crew of my vice people because of security reasons, and they were like, you should. We were waiting for updates from Mariupol, from Zhenya Maloletka and Mstislav Chernov, who did like one of the most prominent works for now, and keep following that. And I still always, wherever I could highlight them, you should check that. They were risking their lives for 21 days, being in besieged Mariupol and being the only source, the only independent source of AP agency. And we were just waiting the plus message from them that they're alive, and Misha Polenchak was sending me that. That's something what you cannot even reflect. I was watching the video of Katya's presentation and reminding all these very first days when you just like, okay, it's happening, I'm gonna think about that after. You just like, you have no time to reflect, and maybe it's even easier because you don't stuck in this like, oh my God, it's so unfair. Oh my God, who did this decision that I should be a war generation? Who did this decision that my people should die, flee, that all my female friends fled to Europe during the first week? All my male friends joined the army, and you just like, okay. And here is a Nathan hotel serving eggs and avocado toast every morning for foreign journalists, and everything looks normal, but that's not normal. This understanding took a month, I guess. So now mostly photographing and editing, and also a bit directing, a bit. Bless you. Thank you.
Are questions in the room? we have time for at least one. No, not at this point. Okay, thank you. So, thank you, Kateryna, and thank you, Julia, for giving us an insight in your situation, like your living situation and also your professional situation that is now so close together, and as well giving us a brief insight into the Ukrainian photography and also the connection between journalism and the known voice. We will hopefully continue the exchange and the talk, and if you are online, you are free to follow them and follow the work and support them, because I guess also the war makes clear that we have different privileges and can use them to support and to give a shout out to voices that need to be heard. So thank you.
Thank you.
For everybody here in the room and online, we will have a break until the keynote from Anush Babajanyan will start. You will see online the HPR slideshow, and Nina Röder will give for everybody who's here in the room the chance to discover the exhibition.
Hier ungefähr, das Mikro. Soundcheck, Soundcheck. Gleich geht es weiter with the CANON Keynote. So we are testing the audio. Please stand by. It's 25 minutes to the keynote, and we reconnected all the wires from the audio, so we can pegel the thing much better. You don't hear anything, but it's a 1 minute delay in the stream. So what you are seeing in the stream is not what is happening now. It could be that I'm already gone, and you still see me in the stream. Ja, besser? Ihr hört mich gut? Es ist schön im Stream. One, two, three, test, test, test. One, two, three. Oh, three. Oh, hello, doggy. Hello, doggy, doggy. You want to have the microphone? Woof. Yeah. Okay, keep on talking, keep on talking. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I have some gladioles here in front of me, very pretty, white and red. The print is so far, this is a live test. We are doing a sound check, so don't be... Was? Nicht umdrehen? Ach so. Ah, ihr macht einen Synchronitätstest. Synchron, hallo. Ja, hello. Ja. Sehr schön. Lippensynchrontest. So, ja, Lippensynchrontest war schön. Also heißt es, man muss in Zukunft, wenn wir das weitermachen, das Mischpult vor dieses Videomischpult halten. Mikrofon hier. Also, 1, 2, 3, Test. 14 minutes to go. CANON Keynote. Hamburg Portfolio Review. Yeah, we are checking the sound, and I think we should redistribute the link soon too. So, what does Dirk say? Is it synchrone or is it not synchrone? Yes, waiting for confirmation. I hope this was not distracting anyone from the real content of the event. So, yeah, this is Hamburg Portfolio Review, and I'm okay. Check, check. Soundcheck für Synchronität. Emma, ist das jetzt live in dem Stream? Ja. Fertig? Müsst ihr die Leute unterhalten? Ja. Oder ist es andersrum? Ist eher das Video das, was...
Ja, das ist das, was wir jetzt probieren.
Ja. Gut. Schneiden wir aber alles raus. Gleich heute Abend schon. Man kann ja den Livestream danach noch bearbeiten und dann das Recording. Hello, guten Tag. It's 8 minutes to go and it's the CANON Keynote from Hamburg Portfolio Review, but I'm only doing the sound check, so I have no content. I'm just testing the equipment and I hope the lip sync quality is better now. My name is Lip, and the lip sync quality is this thing, and it's better now. Maybe it's better now. It's better now. Yes. 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 Maybe it's better now. It's the Hamburg Portfolio Review. You're waiting for the CANON Keynote in 7 minutes. So at the moment we are still checking the lip sync quality of the live stream. And I'm testing it, and Zoom is watching and checking if the synchronity is correct. Nochmal. Nur, also wirklich, rede nicht da. Warum denn hier? Aber sie spricht ja nicht so rein, sie spricht ja so rein. Wir klippen das. So, das hier ist die Lautstärke. Hello. Test. Kommt Feedback da hinten rechts raus, auf jeden Fall. Okay, gut. Und jetzt brauchen wir dann den... Ja.
Ah, so we have it, okay.
That
Super.
sounds very good, so maybe you just start.
Yes, for sure. So it's my pleasure to welcome you again here at Hamburg Portfolio Review and to introduce you to the original final Canon Keynote here in Hamburg. This year we have the pleasure to welcome the Armenian photographer Anush Babajanyan. She is a member of 7 Agency and a National Geographic explorer. Anush focuses her work on social narratives and personal stories. In addition to working extensively in the South Caucasus, she continues to photograph as well in Central Asia and, as many like photojournalistic lives, made it around the world. Anush is currently working on the publication of her book on Nagorno-Karabakh, and I heard rumors it will be published in October. And she also continues to work and cover the region there. She's also working on an environmental project in the countries of Central Asia, supported by the National Geographic Society. Last but not least, Anush is the winner of the 2019 Canon Female Photojournalist Grant. And her work has surely been published internationally, for example, in the New York Times, Washington Post, and National Geographic, and many, many others. So it's an honor for me to welcome Anush Babajanyan here.
Thank you, Miriam. Can everyone hear me well? Yeah, thank you for this introduction, and thank you for the invitation to this wonderful event. So I will not be able to probably change your mood with this presentation because we're talking about yet another conflict that continues, and this time in the region of South Caucasus. On this presentation, during this presentation, I will be talking about my work in Nagorno-Karabakh. So this is a zone, a conflict zone between Armenia and Azerbaijan, for which there is a continuous conflict. This is also an unrecognized republic. And so even these days, even last week, there were events. There was attack on on southern locations of Armenia this time, but Nagorno-Karabakh remains in the basis, in the core of this continuous conflict. And the people living here, they face uncertainty, and yeah, we hope some resolution will finally happen and there will be peace. So this is what everyone hopes for. I will begin with the year 2016, when I started to actually work in Nagorno-Karabakh. Being from Armenia, I had visited Karabakh a lot, but this is when I actually started to work there. And 2016 was a year when a war broke out after a long time. The first war was in 1988 and ended in 1993. So, but the conflict continued along the borders until 2016, when it broke out into a war. And I photographed here, you can see the village Talish, a house which the residents managed to leave just before these attacks happened. So the village is in the north of Nagorno-Karabakh, and right now, after 2020, this village, Armenians do not live there anymore. During those days, I also drove to the town of Martakert, where I stopped to meet these two soldiers, Vahe on the left and Harut on the right, and we were talking above in the field and then heard an order to hide. And so we went together in the trenches, and for some moments, for some minutes, we just didn't speak. They sat and they were waiting, and I was photographing them. I followed their journey afterwards as well. They both made it after the war, and they're both luckily living their lives. But someone like Harut, who's on the right, was only 18. His fate is something that repeats for many young people. Everyone in Armenia, every man has to serve in the military from when they're 18 until they're 20. So now we live in such a reality that these young people end up actually going to war. During those days, I also photographed a funeral of a boy who was one of the civilians killed in this event. And in 2016, I was still beginning as a photojournalist. I was not yet a member of the 7 Photo Agency. There was a struggle, and I didn't go on with any assignment. I went just because I thought this was important to cover, and only later I decided to start sending these photographs and pitching to try and show this reality and spread the word that this is happening, that this conflict has been highly, has not been covered enough. It's never covered enough. Why? I'm not sure. Maybe there's not enough interest. Maybe it's just there are many factors to this, but it's been my mission to continue and show that this exists, that the war and uncertainty continues. So again, in the village of Talish, I photographed a vehicle that was shelled during those days. And after 2016, after this war, I continued to go back to Karabakh to cover the aftermath, of course. And it's not only the aftermath, because peace wasn't really there. It was only this pause, this time when people were still uncertain, but there wasn't war. That was it. And while covering the aftermath, I also I also found and saw this reality of many large families forming in Nagorno-Karabakh. And that was happening because the local government created incentives. For example, after the 6th child, you receive a house. So that was important for many people. And so, but not only that, there was also a patriotic sort of feeling and mood, because so many were martyred at the borders. So they mothers wanted to have more children to populate Nagorno-Karabakh. So this is a family of Araxia Grigorian. She had 7 children. She has 7 children, and her eldest son had just returned from his service for a break. So I was lucky to be there and take a picture of the whole family. And they are in the house that they received from the government about a year ago. This is also one of Araxia's children. And I decided to follow this story for a few years. A settlement called Alashan, where people from the village Talish were relocated while their homes were being rebuilt, to be destroyed again in 2020 during the war that I will tell you about in a little bit. So this is another picture from that story that was part of the bigger project about newborns, about large families, and about new children being born. And in 2000, so I continued working, and in 2017 I became a member of 7 Photo Agency, and that platform was important for me to continue speaking about this, to continue doing my other work as well. The project, the photography from Nagorno-Karabakh was published. The stories after the 2016 work were also published even back then in Washington Post, I remember, in Vice News so things started to happen, and in 2019, I received a grant, the Canon Female Photojournalist grant, to continue working on this project, on large families in Nagorno-Karabakh, and in general, the realities of this land. And so this is a baby newborn in the Stepanakert maternity ward. And Stepanakert is the capital of Nagorno-Karabakh. A family who I worked with for many years, from 2017 till 2020, and now as well, we are always in touch. So the Babajanyan family, they had 9 children when I met them, and here Liana is pregnant with her 10th child, who she decided was her last one. And then in the village Norerkej, this family who I worked with also for a few years, the village Metztarer, which is in the region called Hadrut, which Armenians also lost control of in 2020. And this is the photography that I created in February 2020, after I received the grant. So February was the month right before COVID. I managed to travel there and to work extensively in the first month of 2020, and then in March, the world, that everything stopped. We were in our homes, but this was a project that I was able to send to the Festival Visapolimage in Perpignan, and I was glad that after all they were able to show it in September 2020. So this is 2 sisters who I climbed this hill with, and the hill overlooks the town of Martakert. On the horizon, there is already Azerbaijan on that side. A cadet of the military academy going to Stepanakert. In the village Sheker, this is the flag of Nagorno-Karabakh. It looks like the Armenian flag, except for the white sort of stairs. So then again, in the village Metztarer, this was still in 2022. I photographed this plane that used to belong to a World War II marshal. And so it's a village that people liked to visit at the time. But right now, the reality is very different because, again, Armenians lost control of this area as well. So it was important for me to have photographed it, to have documented these places in 2020, only a few months before a war started there. In 2020, in September, on the 27th of September 2020, a war broke out in Nagorno-Karabakh again, this time for a longer period. I traveled there once again on a few days after it began, and again without an assignment, again on my own initiative, because this was important to cover. And this is a table just left the evening before. This was the very first morning then when the house was shelled, the very first morning of the war, early morning of the 27th of September. In the capital, Stepanakert, a funeral is happening for the second time, in fact, because this boy who was Erik Hovsepian is his name. He was killed during the events. He was only 18. He was buried in the village called Taravart. During the events of the war, half of this village was handed over to Azerbaijan, and the boy's body needed to be transported to another location. So here in Stepanakert, they're burying him for the second time. In the background, we can see on the hill is the town of Shushi, which is the second largest town in Nagorno-Karabakh. And Shushi, at this time when I photographed it, is already under Azerbaijani control. So until now, the people of Stepanakert always say that they find themselves in a in the palm of their hands, and under constant eyes and risk of being in the open, being below Shushi. So this is the town of Shushi back in October when Armenians were still there. On October 8, the cathedral Razanchetsotz was targeted twice, and this is the result. Razanchetsotz was the symbol of Shushi, so a beautiful white cathedral. And this I photographed on October 16th, and only a few days later, Armenians had to leave Shushi completely. And now there's this, it's blocked for everyone. A boy named David Uzunyan, who also fell to this war. I photographed his family and talked to them already in Yerevan. Obviously, many Armenians from Armenia had to participate in the war, not only people, Armenians of Nagorno-Karabakh, but also Armenia. So overall, around 7,000 soldiers fell to the war in 2020. It lasted 45 days. On the very first days, I was photographing in the town of Martuni, and just a peaceful scene. A serviceman is fixing his car to go somewhere, and only an hour after this scene, everyone, including us and my group, were hiding in bunkers for 4 to 5 hours, waiting for shelling to stop, because the town Martuni started to be aggressively shelled by different types of weapons, such as grad, for example, which is often used. So this town was, for some reason, often targeted. The family that I worked with pretty often, the same family, Babajanyan, who had 10 children, had left Stepanakert during the days of the war. And after it ended, some Armenians actually stayed in Armenia. Some of those from Nagorno-Karabakh actually stayed there, but most of them returned after the war, just like this family, saying that they could not imagine any other place where they could live. They don't have a proper home anywhere else. So here the children are only maybe about 10 days after the war. They're happy and just feeling comfortable being at home, you know. And this is also Stepanakert, the capital. Back in Shushi, still during the days of the war, this is, these are remains of a rocket called Smerch. Families returning to Nagorno-Karabakh after the war. These people were going back to the town of Askeran. Also, after the war, two regions that were between Armenia and Nagorno-Karabakh were handed over to Azerbaijan. They were very large regions, almost the size of Nagorno-Karabakh itself. And so one of them is Kelbajar, and Armenians living there were burning their homes so that these homes would not be inhabited by Azeris. And this is what is happening here. So the owner has burnt down his home, or her home, has left, and we found it burning. And right above this home, only a few meters above, is this cathedral called Dadivang. Dadivang is also very symbolic for Armenians, and it is in this region. So on these days, Armenians were returning to Dadivang to say farewell, knowing that a few days later, every Armenian has to abandon this region. And so this was yet another painful time for everyone. And this region was handed over on November 30th, 2020. So these are the last days of November. Families who had to also abandon their homes from these regions. So Zhanna Sultanyan on the left is with her little brother. I photographed her in Yerevan. Zhanna is from a village called Kumayri, but they had to move to Gyumri. And on the right is Araxia, who I still photographed there in Berdzor, in Lachin, in Nagorno-Karabakh. So on this day, she was waiting for trucks to move to Armenia. 1 year after this war, in September 2021, I photographed the commemoration of those who fell to the war, and also tried to show the positive as well. This is just an ordinary morning in Stepanakert, where a mom is taking her daughter to school. A nice bakery, I think, that opened pretty recently, if I'm not mistaken. This is the final image, a return to 2016, when I first started to work in Nagorno-Karabakh, and the mood was quite gloomy, and the reality is that it hasn't changed. Everything in the years hasn't even advanced in any way. So this is it, and my wish is just for peace to finally come to Nagorno-Karabakh. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anush, for your keynote.
Yeah.
We have now the time to install a micro and to open up the room online and offline for questions. So are there any questions to the situation in Karabakh and as well to Anush? Then please let us know. Anush will be here. Yes, of course. So I will hand my nine.
Okay.
Okay.
One question, because we talked yesterday a little bit about it. There is not only the conflict between Armenia and Azerbaijan, but we talked that you had this revolution in 2018, the Dukov revolution. And now also internally in Armenia, something changed. Maybe you explain what is the thing right now with the President Pashinyan, and so maybe it would be also an interesting.
Sure, you're right. You're right to remind about this reality. In 2016, a revolution happened in Armenia, and a new prime minister was elected. It was a peaceful revolution. Nikol Pashinyan was elected. Everyone was quite excited. You know, a country that's usually a bit more solemn. You know, everyone was happy, smiling, a lot of excitement, and people actually felt very positive energy towards the new prime minister. But that was in 2018. And in 2020, the war started, and Armenia did not manage to win this war. A lot of land was lost in Nagorno-Karabakh. I should say that Nagorno-Karabakh didn't manage to win this war, and Armenia and Nagorno-Karabakh are allies. So at this point, Pashinyan lost this love of the people because they were hoping that he would, no one thought that this could happen, and obviously, you know, head of the state, head of the government, he received the blame for this, and though it continues until now, and because right now things are still very heavy. Right now events are happening in Armenia. These days they were happening this week. These couple of days it's a little more peaceful. So yes, he is no longer so well received and so acclaimed as before by Armenians. And that has changed, and really there's a lot of questioning now. Too many people question whether he should remain as, you know, the Armenia's prime minister. Yeah.
But is there then a chance that the old political elite will return?
Well,
or is he actually now the old political elite?
Yes, I mean, for some people, yes, he also became one of them. But the reality is that people tried to organize another revolution. Yes, there were attempts in the recent months, and it didn't work out. They didn't gain momentum. They didn't gain the amount of people that they needed. And so it didn't happen. In that case, they would probably likely bring back the old power, the previous. It's hard because people do not feel positive about them either. It's my feeling that a lot of people hope that maybe someone new will appear and save the situation. But then, you know, I think one of the smartest things would be now, and would have been for years, for everyone to just work hard, do what they do very well, you know, and nothing else would be necessary, you know, because it's all of this blaming of whoever is the head of, you know, prime minister. It's just silly conversation, you know. Yeah.
Yeah, bitte.
So thanks, Anush. Just a question, what from your personal point of view, what could be a maybe solution for this conflict?
Oh, well, that's a very difficult question, Andreas.
Sorry.
Yes. What could be a solution? Oh my God. Well, a solution could be maybe to stop right now, to just stop, and for everyone to stay where they are. That's all people want, you know, no more lives to be lost. But that's not the solution for anyone, you know. That's not. So who knows what could be a better thing to happen. Yeah.
Thank you, Anush. Are there other questions here in the room or online? Yes, please. Come. Yeah.
Yes, you're very loud anyway, yeah.
I adore your touching and incredible work. And I have a question about Ukrainian covering war in my country. It's for you, how you're dealing with the feeling that, okay, I should save my people, I should help these poor families, these exact people who are sharing their stories, how you balance with that. Because some of my colleagues, several days after Kyiv region was liberated, we were just doing humanitarian aid.
Yes.
But there are other people who do that kind of work while we have our cameras and our vision and our ability to tell these stories. How do you deal with this feeling that, okay, I should bring down bread and water because these people, it's really, really, really tough conditions.
Yeah, well, I think you understand this all too well. Yes, you do, because you deal with the same. But the thing for me is always number one, we are humans. That's number one. We're never number one photographer, no. First of all, human, right? So depends on the situation. You know, if something, you're in a situation, you know, someone needs help. Like, I don't even feel bad about saying this. Like, there was this Babajanyan family, right? 10 people. So they're there, I meet them on the days of this war, and they're just in their house looking out, and the shelling is happening, and they're telling me, look, it's happening, it's here. And I'm looking at them, and I know that everyone in Armenia is very, very worried and accepting people from Karabakh in their homes, and every hotel is open, hostels. So I tell them about it. I say, Liana, everyone in Yerevan is, you know, accepting. Go. The buses are right there. They're taking people. Just take the children. And she looks at me and like, oh, okay. Let me call the station, see when the buses move. 2 hours later, they're out. What happened here? I told them about something that changed the reality, right? So are we supposed to do that as journalists? But was I supposed to not say that everyone in Yerevan is accepting people, everyone, you know, the buses are right there? Of course I'm going to say this. And this happens and they go. Yeah, a lot of what we do, why this question appears is where should you do it or not, is because of the ethics, right? Because we are afraid. We're not afraid, but we should be wary of changing the reality, changing the event. We should not change the event. But we are all humans. This is none of this is, you know, robotic. We can't live that way, and we can't work that way. And war is personal, not the first, you know, time we experience it. So that and other cases have also happened when, you know, I was very good friends with the people whose house I always stayed with, a woman who always helped me to find people who I was hoping to photograph, and during the days of the war, I'm staying with them. So I don't know, like things like that. I couldn't photograph them because they didn't want to, so that was good. So that sort of kept things separate. So there was my sort of human side. I was staying with them, living with them, going out and photographing other people who I did not deal with on a friendly level. So depends. I think the right thing is just to assess the situation, see what you feel right about, and in the future, in your work, when you're presenting something, to be honest about it too. It's always like if a question appears, then say it, you know, then things will be right. You know, none of it is, as long as you present everything, we present everything as it has been, as it is, it's going to be okay. And journalism is still, you know, is still there. Our most important thing is to show the reality, and we will still be able to show it. So yeah. Thank you. Thank you for that question. That was a good question.
So, are there any questions? Then please let us know. By chance. But not online? Okay. Then I have to say thank you, Anush Babajanyan, for your lecture, for your answer, for being here in Hamburg at the Hamburg Portfolio Review and giving the Canon Keynote. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Miriam, for presenting me. Thank you, everyone, for being here, for listening. I was happy to tell this story too and share this. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Please stay here.
Okay.
Because, if something is clear after these days and after today, is that documentary photography and photojournalism is more than holding a camera and more than pressing the shutter. So thank you all for coming. Thank you to the Hamburg Portfolio Review for inviting us, for inviting all of us. And now I have the wonderful call for everybody from the Hamburg Portfolio team, from the organization team, to come here in front of the cameras to close the Hamburg Portfolio Review 2022. Yes, please join here. All right. So a warm applause to the whole team, to everybody. Please, please. And yeah, it's time to say goodbye for this year, I guess. And I was told there is a traditional goodbye wave. So
Thank you.
goodbye.
See you next year.